What does the word gutsy mean to you?
Gutsy, it always actually interesting. It always feels like a very English word. Oh, that's a gutsy move, you know? It feels like the gutsiest thing for me is to be me. And I think I'm still getting there. I don't think I'm fully there.
You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. Whether you need an inspirational pick-me-up or a swift kick in the mental ass, the Gutsy Podcast is your bi-weekly guide to getting out of your head and back into action. I'm Laura Ora, branding and mindset coach for female entrepreneurs, CEO of Works & Co., and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. It's time to fuel your gutsy. My love, I must give you a trigger warning as we begin this episode. We're going through and discussing some challenging situations regarding narcissistic abuse, both physically and mentally. So please use your discretion moving forward. Whether you're recovering from a narcissistic situation or you're trying to navigate what your next move is, this is a beautifully nurturing episode to support you as you set boundaries, reconnect with who you are, and relearn what it is to flourish and thrive from the inside out. Marina helps women flourish after narcissistic abuse with her Narcissistic Template Method. She guides women to uncover the hidden shadows that typical therapy, mindset strategies, or self-care habits won't address, so that they rise and become the fabulous woman they were born to be. You can find her work, #1 bestselling author, and podcast called Turn Yourself On at marinaj.net. Before we chat with Marina, I want to let you know that the next Mindfuckery workshop is open for registration. The last few times that I have had the absolute honor of guiding and teaching this workshop has been life-changing. Women are typically coming to the workshop because they're stuck in a routine. They can't seem to move forward. They're caught in their own way and their mind keeps running all over the fucking place. Yet they know that they were made for more. In just the last class, on day 1, a woman had a life-changing scenario where she was able to pinpoint the root of what was going on. And because she found the root, everything started to make sense. She was able to make movement and is making incredible progress on her goals. One of my favorite parts, though, about this entire workshop is watching the energy transformation. Day 1, everyone is a little shy, a little timid, not really sure what to do or what to say. But by the end of day 5, everyone's energy is fucking electric. It's like everyone turns back on. The spark is back in their eye. Everyone is reignited with who they actually are. And they have the clarity and the tools to move forward. So if this is feeling like you, if you're ready to get out of your own way, if you're ready to break the cycle and the habit, if you're ready to get unstuck and come alive in the process, go to lauraora.com. There's a banner at the top of the page and sign up for the next Mindfuckery workshop, which runs November 6th through 10th. All right, my friends, this episode is beautifully nurturing. It's a tough conversation, but it's such a necessary one for us to hold space to talk about. So let's get into today's episode. My lovely friend Marina, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. We were just having the best of chats before we got started here. So I want to make sure everyone gets all of your amazingness today. Tell me a little bit about your journey, your entrepreneurial journey, your life journey. What has brought you to where you are today?
I began my life feeling everybody else louder than myself. And so people felt loud, not in the words they said, but their energy. And I felt it in my body so much that I would know what you were thinking, what you were feeling, where you had contracted and you were tense, way louder than anything for me. And so as I grew up, my spine started to move with where I was leading myself, right? So because I could feel you and the fact that you were stressed and, hey, I'm, young, I'm going to support you at the expense of me on the right. And I'm going to support you to the expense of me on the left. And pretty soon my spine is going to follow me. And so the age of 12, 13, I was diagnosed with scoliosis, which is a curvature of the spine. Mine was quite severe. I was lucky in that it was an S-bend. So it was, they thought they could stop it from getting any worse. So they gave me a back brace to wear, which was very, very restrictive and very painful. But it was almost like the first lesson in, Marina, you need to support yourself. And it was hurt and it was painful, because at that time it felt painful to support myself. It felt like there wasn't room because I could just feel everybody else so loudly. I was so porous. I was feeling everything. Then I became a yoga teacher and I began my healing, really. And I started with the body. Then I became a life coach, which was back 20 years ago, back when people thought I was a netball coach, because nobody knew. I mistakenly called myself a women's coach. They went, "Is that netball?" I'd be like, "No, it's coaching." They went, "Netball." No, sorry. I mean, and then it was this whole thing of trying to explain what you were, but you weren't that, because it was just so novel back then. It was, the early noughties. And then I became a single mum. And actually I became a single mum first. Then I found the coaching. I became a coach. And through all of it, my journey has very much been about actually learning how to have a really good relationship with myself, because I'd had so many relationships with the people around me where I made it all about them and not about me. And they made it all about them and not about me. And so their lives went really well because I was pouring my energy into all of them, right? And I'm amazing at healing. I think so many of your listeners will, whatever they're doing for, their careers, their businesses, you'll all be healing in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the product that you offer or a service that you offer, we're all healing. And I wasn't getting very far. Hey, so for me, my journey's been about the self because I've made it so much about the other.
Look, if that isn't relatable, I don't really know what is. I know that so many of the women in my community, that's one of the top things that we talk about that comes to the surface, because we want to give, right? We want to help, we want to support, but it often comes at the expense of our own. And so not having the boundary in place, or not knowing how to set that boundary, or to know when and how to say no to certain things, is continuously a conversation. So what did that look like for you to start to reclaim and really honor yourself?
Being really honest with how you affect me and not skipping over it and not making excuses for you. But not being frightened that I'm going to hurt you. That's a huge one. And really staying connected with me, so much so that I don't jump out into you and how you're feeling and what you're needing. And, it's okay, only take 5 minutes. It's okay, she means well. It's okay, she had a hard childhood. It's okay, I'm just going to help them quickly with something. Okay, you're connecting to what they need. But if you don't also connect to what you need, you're not going to actually know whether it's in alignment with you or not. And so I always say to myself and to my clients and to anybody, if you want to have good boundaries, start with how do they affect me and stay there. Don't deviate, don't jump. It might feel uncomfortable, but that's how you begin. You've got to feel how things affect you. Because when you're really honest about how things affect you, you will always make the right decision. And I always say, if it's right for you, it's going to be right for them.
Absolutely. And that part about really being honest with yourself,
Yeah.
I think that gets skipped over more often than not, right? Like, because if we're honest with ourselves, then we have a knowing. And that knowing leads to then that action, which feels scary, right? Especially if you've never set the boundary before, you've never had you've never pushed back, you've never separated yourself, you've never created that distance in whatever form or fashion that looks like for you. And so that's super uncomfortable, right? Especially if you're, one of your tendencies is to people please. But if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? So at what point is the discomfort, how much longer are you going to allow that within yourself?
Yeah, I mean, and we don't want to be a horrible person. We might go, oh my God, but I don't, if I say that, what are they going to think of me? And the last thing I want to do is hurt you, so I don't want to do that. But we're fighting to hurt ourselves over years. And we think that this is going to work. We think, this is going to be a good thing. But one of the things I really see a lot is, if you've walked away from narcissistic abuse, from toxic relationships, difficult relationships, one-sided relationships where it's all about them, but not about you, you wouldn't have been safe to call a boundary because it would have incited attack. You would have been admonished. You would have had backlash, rejection, maybe physical abuse, certainly emotional abuse. And so we learn as children to mitigate that. And the way that we stay with people, even if they're not really our people, is we become people pleasers. But really what we're saying is we've got a main goal in mind, and that's to stay safe. It's not really about, I always hear about the word people pleasing, but I kind of think that always sounds and feels really superficial to me, even though I use it all the time, because it's not the truth. The truth is, we were in survival. And so we could change that to survival pleasers, or something like that. Like it was a way of staying safe. So I think there's that. And I also think that growing up, so many of us we didn't see our mums or our dads or our caregivers saying a full-bodied no, feeling really good about themselves, and it working out for them. We didn't see it. Most of us didn't see it because most of our parents or caregivers, they didn't have that experience either. And so there's a lot of trauma within itself of, will I say no? What will they say when I do this? Oh God, this feeling's coming up in my tummy right now. Oh, I feel really awful. I feel sick. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to be me. And you just do the whole thing of, and then afterwards you leave and you're like, oh God, why did I say yes? Why? Again, I've done this thing. And you go through this loop because it's still safer. It's still safer than the risk that it takes to fully be honest about actually how that person is affecting you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question that comes up then is, how do we start to build that safety within ourselves?
Yeah.
If we are post narcissistic abuse, if we are post an experience where we were not in a safe container before, how do we start to rebuild that safety within ourselves?
Gaslighting is an interesting thing, right? And so for any of you listening, gaslighting, if somebody gaslights you, they are denying your reality, right? They're denying the truth. And so when we've been around a lot of people or people who have gaslit us, where the reality starts to distort long after those relationships and we've walked away, we start to gaslight ourselves. We don't even realize we're doing it, right? And so we become almost like a narcissist to ourselves. And so we're like, it's okay, just have the chocolate. It's okay, just sleep in. You don't need to do the run right now. You know what? I'm saying I want to run a business. I'm saying I want to grow my business. I'm saying I want to take this to the next level, but not today. I'm going to do something else. And we end up not having boundaries with ourselves. So let's say that you don't feel safe to call a boundary with anybody. That's fine. Start with you and start with something small that isn't scary. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I mean, that isn't going to be a huge thing for you. Just start with something small that you can regularly keep for yourself every day. And as you gaslight yourself less, and as you start to keep that one promise to yourself every day, it's going to be easier and easier for you to go, actually, this doesn't feel right. I'm going to say no. And you will find yourself, even if you feel scared inside, something in you will find yourself saying it. And you'll be like, hot damn, I did it. And how that person takes it is up to them. But you're saying it for you. And I always say, there are two kinds of boundaries. There's the one that you feel safe to do, and there's the one that you don't feel safe to do. If you don't feel safe to do it, you may not feel that you're safe with that person. If you're not safe with that person, there might be a different kind of boundary you need to do, because not everybody is safe to have boundaries with. Sometimes the only boundary we can have with them is simply no contact, to completely be away from them, So we want to make sure that we're not around emotionally and physically abusive people and seeing if we can put a boundary in, because my experience is boundaries don't work with narcissists. Boundaries don't work with toxic people. Boundaries don't work with any of those sorts of people at all, right? So we need to get really honest as well, because I feel like the word boundary, it's such a big word, and most people roll their eyes when they boundaries, oh, for God's sakes, right? Right, because a lot of them have been unsuccessful because we're trying them with the wrong people. If you genuinely have to have lots of big boundaries with people all the time, they're not your people. They're not for you. That's it. And so I always say, like, the biggest boundary becomes how you feel. Don't skip over that. Trust that.
Absolutely. I mean, our body is a compass that is forever guiding us. It speaks often very loudly. Before your brain or anything else can get involved, right? And I think that what you just shared probably has somebody going, shit, right now, right? But in the best of ways, right? It's this realization, it's kind of this internal wake up to say, like, okay, these are the things that I have been allowing or tolerating, and not saying with abuse or mental or physical or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just saying, like, the continuous actions of people in your life that is causing like disruption in your mind and in your body. We're tolerating some of that stuff, right? And until we get very true and honest with ourselves and say, okay, like, I'm no longer going to accept that. This is not okay in my world. It will continue. What we allow continues.
Yeah. But we've got to do it with people that are emotionally doing the work. So I remember I interviewed a beautiful lady on my podcast many moons ago. I don't really interview many people. I kind of just talk, and I haven't done my podcast for about 2.5 years. It's something I would love to have you on it. I already know, by the way. So we're going to kick it up if you're interested. Come on in. But I remember thinking, I said to her, look, for this particular podcast, it was going to be more of a conversation rather than I'm just going to interview her. But in the previous conversations we'd had, she was always talking a lot. She'd go into a big, long story. And whilst it was really interesting, I thought, I need to say something. And so I told her, I said, look, it needs to be 50-50. And if I feel like you're going off into a huge thing, I'm going to give you a sign. And there was this huge pause, and my stomach did a massive lurch. I was like, eh. And she said, you've just made me realize something enormous for my entire life. And she just had this huge realization. And she's like, oh my God, yeah, let's do this. The podcast went amazing. She was amazing. She really thanked me afterwards. And I was so shocked because I genuinely never really had that reaction to a boundary before. And I realized she's doing the work. And by that, I mean, she's somebody who, when things come up for her, instead of requiring somebody else to change for them, change for me, adjust to me, because I'm this, delicate little wallflower, she's actually saying, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to heal and clear whatever comes up in me, and I'm going to take responsibility for that. And it was such an absolute revelation for me, because I feel like with a lot of people that talk about boundaries, they talk about, you have to change for me. No, I don't see that. The way I see it is letting somebody know, if you do this, this is kind of what I'm probably going to do. This is what I'm going to do. Oh, this is how it affects me. So it's sort of like, if you do that, this is the consequence. I'll need to leave the table, or I'll need to leave the gathering, or whatever it is. I'm not asking you to change. I'm just letting you know what my boundaries are, what my limits are, so that I can look after me. I'm saying it ahead of time, so that when it does happen, or if it happens, it's a lot less heavy lifting for me. I can just up and leave. So I don't believe in the kind of boundaries where you sit there and you tell people and they've got to. No, people grow and learn in their own time. We can say it to them. What they do with it is entirely up to them. But here's what I'm going to do in the meantime.
Yeah, that's amazing. And honestly, so liberating too, because I think that boundaries can get skewed.
Yes. Oh my God.
To think that now it's our responsibility to change this person, when that just puts more pressure on you, right? Like, we can't control other people. That's completely out of our scope of ability, right? And not our responsibility. Our responsibility is our own self.
Yes, you have one body. As far as I can see right now, I'm looking at you, Laura. You're beautiful, and you have one body.
Thank you. Just one.
And just one. You have one body, and you have one heart, and that heart is for your body. It's not to be carrying somebody else's body. It's not to do the work for somebody else. when we do that, we're not in a real relationship with somebody, because we're requiring for them to change and shift and change and shift. And so, right now I can almost hear somebody saying, yeah, but then what do you do about X? What do you do about Y? And I'm like, I hear you. Shift you. I am a great believer. I've taught and coached in shadow work for 20 years, and I call it shadow alchemy, because I don't believe it's work. You know how to do it. It's not work. And everybody on our planet, everybody in your world, if they're really upsetting you, if they're annoying you, if they're not respecting you, where are you not respecting yourself? Look in, because there's some mirror there, and we're always being shown ourselves. We often don't really see ourselves so easily, but we can see in other people what's not okay. And if we get really affected by them, we go, oh, okay, where am I doing that to me? Where am I doing that to myself? It doesn't mean we have to hang around. But if we are in a long-term relationship, we're like, oh, you know what? How about the next time I need to pee, I go pee and I don't hold it in? How about the next time I just need a break, I'm going to get up and give myself a goddamn break? How about the next time that mum from school asks me to pick up her kids for the zillionth time, and I go, so sorry, I'm not around. And you just honor you. When that happens, the people around us have a choice. They can either lift up with us or they just fall away. And this goes for long-term relationships, every single relationship I've seen. Everything we do is an inside job. And at this point, somebody usually says, oh, but it's not always about you. I hate that mirror stuff. The whole shadow is all about you. And it's like, no, but it is. And it's not about beating yourself up. And it doesn't mean you stay there, right? But it means, like, where are you hurting yourself in the same way that somebody else has been hurting you? And it might look differently, right? It's not about you doing it to somebody else. More often than not, and particularly with women, we turn it inwards. We turn it inwards.
Yes. That smallest thing, like you mentioned, when you feel like you have to pee, going pee. Like, it's so funny that you say that, because I did that. I did that as an experiment with myself a couple of years ago. And I was like, okay, how am I? Because one of my childhood traumas is healing from abandonment. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm always worried, was previously always worried about people leaving. And then I turned it inward and I said, how am I abandoning myself? Something as simple as feeling the need to pee and literally pushing it off to the point where now I'm uncomfortable. Now I'm in pain. Now I'm in the car and I have to wait. And I'm putting myself in this situation where I am causing harm and disruption to myself. I've abandoned my body saying, hey, I have to fucking piss. Like, we can laugh about it now, but when we really think about it, it's in those tiny moments and decisions where we go against ourselves. We put ourselves last. We're like, me taking a bathroom break is too much. And it's like really reconditioning and relearning with yourself that, like, if I can't honor myself first, no one else will. Yeah. I always pee. When I have to pee, I freaking pee.
And if you need to pee right now, at any time during this podcast, you go right ahead. I'm right with you. We can pee together. We'll be like, right, we're off for a bathroom pee.
Everyone collectively listening, we're all just going to pee together.
Just go, right? Because, every time you do something amazing for yourself like that, no matter how tiny it seems, because it's actually massive, you open up a new timeline for yourself. And there's something that I still do that I notice about myself, where I'm talking to somebody and I'm so used to just holding space for that person that I don't move. And so I, very similarly to you, I used to hold my wee in and now I don't anymore. So yes. And I would also do this thing where I wouldn't get up to get water. I wouldn't even move in my seat, because I would be worried that it would break this sort of spell almost, and they would reject me and they would abandon me. And so I would become really still. And I'm a really good listener. And so people always tell me all their stuff, right? I'm sure it's the same for you, right? And so they'd always be like, I can't even believe I'm saying this to you. And it's because I didn't have any energetic boundaries. So people were telling me stuff anyway. But still now, I still sometimes think subconsciously, if I get up and move, it will be over. And that is often when you've had narcissistic abuse or you've been in these one-sided relationships, that's actually how it is. Because when it starts to be about you, it does break the spell, and they stop being around you. They only want to be around you when it's actually about them. So the next time you're in front of somebody that you feel is emotionally safe, this is what I do. I practice, I move. I might look out the window a little bit. I'll be back to you. I'll scratch, I'll get water. I mean, you see me drinking now. I'm drinking, I've broken that spell of just being a slave to you and just being there purely for you, but not me. Yes. And so the more I break it, the more it opens up new timelines for me, where then I call people in that love that about me. That, oh, Marina's here for me and she's here for her. Awesome. Let's go. Yeah.
I'm always so empowered too that when you do those things for yourself and other people get to witness it, it opens up their eyes that there are alternative ways as well, right? Because I find, and I don't know if this is true for you as well, but I find like through the work that I do, there's just so many people that this is a new thing, right? This is literally maybe the first exposure or experience with like, hey, it's okay to honor myself. And so there's this kind of eye opening, like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing things through a different lens right now. So I just love that when you honor yourself, how that gives other people, not that they need your permission, but sometimes they need to see or feel it to say like, oh, like I really love and admire you and you're doing those things. Like maybe I can do a little bit of that for myself as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's wonderful, isn't it, to see a woman take up space.
Oh yeah.
Don't you just think, oh, she's just reflecting me back to me. Got it. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And then you do it and you realize there's room. Isn't it funny? You don't think there's room and you go, oh, the person didn't walk out. Oh, they're still here. Oh, okay. Even though I feel nervous, I can do it again. Great. Get that glass of water again and drink it. Oh my God, they're still here. Okay, good. And so it's like just very, very gently reconditioning ourselves so that we start to relax. Because sometimes I realize when I'm talking to people, I'm holding on. I'm holding on to my belly. I'm kind of, I'm holding. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? We need to do that. You're fine. You're going to be fine. Yes. And it's like, oh, and it's all the experiences that we've had. We can really start to, just be really gentle with ourselves. I feel like there needs to be more gentleness for all of us,
My goodness, my friends, what an incredibly nurturing episode this is. And there's more to come. But in this mid-roll here in the center of today's episode, I just want to remind you to nurture yourself, to maybe get up and take a walk, to re-pour a glass of ice water, to get a warm cup of coffee, to grab your favorite blanket, to honor yourself as you're listening to this. Because if you're listening to it, I know it's because you are familiar with it. And for that, I just want to say I'm sorry that you are. And I'm also really glad that you're here. It's raw conversations like this that empower us to remember that we're not alone. While these situations are hard and challenging and lonely at times, it's conversations like this that remind you that there are so many people that love and understand you, and myself being one of them. So before you continue on with this episode, do something that's nurturing for yourself. Grab something that fills your tank, and then let's get back into it together. Let's finish this journey side by side. What are your thoughts on, because we're talking a lot about kind of rebuilding and thriving after narcissistic encountership, right? So what do you say to someone that maybe is just on the other side, or just like restarting to relearn themselves outside of that situation? How do you start to rebuild your confidence and that personal freedom that was once taken from you?
Yeah. It's like you've got to rebuild the self. The self has to be rebuilt. When you are in a narcissistic relationship, you merge with the other person. Their problems are your problems. Their feelings are your feelings, right? Their abandonment, you're going to abandon yourself, all of it. So you, at that point, when you're just out of it, you won't really know your strong likes. You won't really know your strong dislikes. You will probably be doubting yourself, gaslighting yourself a lot. And one of the most important things at that stage, right at the beginning, is validation. You need to tell your story. And you need to be heard by people that are not going to talk about the narcissist and say, well, what kind of childhood did they have? Or do you reckon they're covert? Or are they, no, you need people to make it about you so that when you say what happened, they'll say, oh, my darling, oh, that's awful. Because that's starting to release the gaslighting from you. That starts to release the cognitive dissonance from you when you start to see what is wrong and what is right. It's incredibly healing. And as you are getting validated, you are also hearing yourself. And as you start to hear yourself, you will start to hear, oh, I was hurt when that happened. Oh, I didn't feel so good when that happened. I'm right. Oh, I was right with that. And you start to get feedback on yourself. And so the self begins to rebuild. That's right at the beginning.
That validation is beautiful, isn't it? When someone finally hears and sees you for who you are.
I think, and on a very tacky, superficial level, I have a bit of a theory. I think that's why so many women I know, me included, like these reality shows, like the Kardashians or, the Housewives of Beverly Hills. And I feel like even though we might not be into them as much anymore, like I'm not as much anymore, there was a time, and I remember sitting there and I thought, why am I so into this? And I thought, oh my God, it's like I'm needing to see somebody do something wrong. And then that person say, that's not right. And then it gets how that person feels gets validated. And I'm needing to see bad behavior and other people say, that's not okay that you did that. Or I'm watching it and going, that's not okay. It's very healing for me. So I feel like that's part of the attraction, plus some of their jewelry and what have you is really beautiful. But there's a whole thing in, seeing like real life. I mean, as real as it can be, real life, real relationships, right? But we're seeing what happens when the boundaries are crossed. We're seeing what happens when somebody else upsets somebody else. What do you do? Because we don't really see it. We don't really see many people modeling it in a great way. And obviously, a lot of them are not modeling it in a great way either. It's very cathartic, Yeah.
Yes. Just to see it and feel it outside of you. Like that's not your situation to fix or to mold with, but you can see that it's happening elsewhere as well. What about some of our beautiful listeners that I know maybe are still kind of in the thick of the narcissistic abuse, whether that's mental, physical, spiritual, emotional? How do you begin to transition, or what are some words of wisdom that you might have for her?
I think the first thing is recognizing it. I think many people are in it and don't realize that's what it is. I know that I did a podcast episode on narcissistic abuse, and one of my clients just listened to it on the fly. And as she listened to it, she went, oh, that's me. That's my relationship. And she didn't realize what it was. There wasn't even a word like, what is it? Because I remember reading about narcissistic abuse and I just thought it was, the man looking at the reflection of himself in the lake. I didn't realize what it really was until, I woke up to it. So part of it is waking up to it. Is actually going, wait a minute, is there a reason I feel this way? Or this is whatever it is. And so the first thing I think, if you're actually, so most of the clients that I coach are after it and they want to flourish. If you're in it, it's to know that you're in it. You've got to know what it is that you're in it. You've also got to know that it's never going to change. Okay. A narcissist, they never feel responsible for their actions. You're responsible. And as long as you're responsible for what they do and how they act, they're never going to heal. And so if they're never going to heal, it's never going to change for as long as you're with them. It doesn't matter what you do. You're going to go through roller coasters and all of that. You can't change it. And that's what I think can be so frustrating and hard to actually get, is that you can't change this. And you might be the sort of person that's amazing at relationships with everybody else. You manage to have great times. There's this one person that you can't, and you're going to keep trying and you're going to keep trying. But if we were to ask you a question and say to you, if you knew that this relationship was never going to change, what would you do? And if you get your answer, which is bye, see ya, you've got to listen to that. You've got to listen to that. And the last part is to get support. I think it's almost impossible to fully get out and fully heal without a really good friend, without a therapist. If you can't afford a therapist, just get some people around you that can see what you can't see. And very often it's the people around you that are seeing it. And it's you that is so loyal, or you don't want to hurt them, or you just think it's you and it's your fault. And if you just become better, it will change. I've coached so many people in this. It's probably close to 1,000, right, in terms of narcissistic abuse. And I've never, ever met a narcissist that is healed. Ever, ever. Ever, 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 right? And I remember getting into a car once for a very long drive in Australia, and I sat in this seat, and this woman who I didn't know was giving me a lift, and she was a friend of a friend. And the first thing she said to me, she goes, "Hi, I'm whatever." I was like, "Hi, I'm Marina." She goes, "Great." She said, "I used to be a narcissist." And my head, I just looked at her and I thought, oh God. And she proceeded to tell me for 2 hours straight, without letting me get a word in at all, how she was reformed. I couldn't wait to get out of the car. And when I got out, I remember calling my girlfriend and saying, "I cannot do that again. Oh my God." And I got the train home, which took me much longer, because the reformed narcissist was still making the entire car ride about her and how amazing she was, and her children were thankful now, and her husband was so, the whole thing. They don't exist because they do not self-reflect. They do not take responsibility. So for anybody that's in it, one of the things that's going to really help for you is really letting go of the fact that it's going to get better. It's actually going to get worse. You're going to feel worse. You're going to feel older. You know, imagine that it doesn't change. Where will you be in 10 years' time? You'd be like a sucked out raisin.
Yeah.
You know, and nothing's worth staying, not for the kids, not for anything. Because what we're really saying is hang with the abuse for the children, hang with the abuse because of money, hang with the abuse because you'll get the house, hang with the abuse because no, absolutely no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gosh, one of the hardest decisions that I've ever made in my life was to go no contact with my mother, because she is my narcissistic abuser. And everything that you were just saying, the try it and the fix it and the bend and the move and the mold, and she'll get better and this will get better, and it gets a little bit better, and then my belief becomes like this inflated balloon of like, oh, here's something to grasp onto, and then right out from underneath of you, it's like you don't even see it until it's done. And it took me a long time, a really long time, of believing and trusting and wanting to lean into this thing, and also this pressure that like, that's your mother, you should have her in your life, you should love her, you should do all these things. And so I just want to acknowledge that if anyone's narcissist is a very, very close family member, I know that's fucking hard to let somebody go, but it's completely necessary and liberating as hell. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, right? Like, do I want her in my life? Of course I would love to have an amazing mother-daughter relationship, but I know in my soul that that is not an option. And when I came to peace and term with that, all of that extra chaos went away. And so it's not easy, but it is possible, but you have to choose it for yourself first, regardless of who this person is.
That's so, just hats off to you, hey, because it's hard. It's full on. It's not easy. Anybody that has had to do that with family, somebody close to you, it's because you've gone through all the other options first, right?
No, every single one of them.
And you probably had very well-meaning people who are like, but it's your mum.
Yeah.
And it's like, nah, people earn the right to be in your life, not through birth, through action. And people earn the right to come into your inner circle. And I always say that if you're in my inner circle, it's because I don't need boundaries with you, right? And it's so important for us to say, to be honest with you, when I see somebody that's had narcissistic abuse, as an adult, what have you, it usually stems from childhood. It's usually something that's gone on with extended family or close family or whatever. And if you've had a parent that has been narcissistic, or a sibling that's been narcissistic, or somebody that's close to you, right, that's been looking after you, that's narcissistic, it basically means you've never lived without some form of narcissism in your life. It basically means that you've lived with no empathy. You've had no empathy towards you. Narcissists have no empathy towards you. They don't care. They actually don't care. And so often, for so many of us, the act of finally going no contact is the beginning of the rest of our lives, right? And that whole thing of no contact, that's the beginning of you having genuine empathy for you, for yourself. And there's the turnaround. There's the turnaround. And, you know, I think when I look at my clients, the ones that go no contact, they start to look really good. And they start to look younger, and they start to just feel lighter because they realize that all of the interference, all of the hassle, it wasn't coming from them. It was coming from these abusers. And once you leave, then there's the stuff you need to deal with within you, right? And that's okay, but at least you can count on you. At least you can trust you. You build the trust in yourself again. And I think, you know, I look at these things as initiations. I think it's one of the biggest initiations you're ever going to get, and one of the least understood initiations as well. So I'm going to use the F-bomb word, which I am going to, just letting you know. I do fucking hate it when people say, but it's your family. It's like, fuck off. You're saying to me that I should take the abuse then because it's my mum, because it's my dad, because it's my brother, because it's I should take the abuse, right? Yet, if it was a narcissistic boss, they'd be like, oh yeah, fuck that right off, leave. So you can leave, you know, a work environment where you're there for 40 hours a week. People go, oh yeah, the boss is a tosser. But actually, you can't leave your family. Are you joking? Like, what is that? That's abuse right there. And when people hear you and all they do is, you know, talk about, well, they mean well, and it was your mum. That's abuse compounding onto the abuse. And that's where we need to say, thank you, but no thank you. And we share it with only the people that truly get it. So thank you for sharing that, because that is huge. And you haven't done that kind of thing lightly. It's impossible to do it lightly. For any child to say no to the parent, that's huge, absolutely huge. That's foundational stuff right there. Very destabilizing. And then as you move on, you're like, oh wow, look at my life, you know.
And that's, like you mentioned, I mean, that's where the thriving really begins.
Yes.
You know, the spark in your eye and the pep in your step and the things that you feel interested in, and just like new ideas that come to you, and you start to get to know who you actually are, and your natural self just starts to pour out in everything that you do, and you can thrive. I mean, I am a poster for that, right? Like, and are there life challenges and things to shift around? Of course, we're all human beings. But I can tell you that after I went no contact, my entire life changed for the better, right? And yes, it took some time, and yes, it took therapy and all types of different practices to really heal through that. And I would be ridiculous to not also tell you that it still comes up sometimes. It's not like it's healed and gone, but I'm better equipped to process through it when it does pop up. But the thriving part of it, my friend, that's where you get to come alive again, right? Like, you see that with your clients. What does thriving look like for them?
Absolutely. Thriving for them is they receive easily. So, you know, when you're around a narcissist, typically you don't want anything from them, because actually what you get from them is yucky energy, all the things. And then you sort of stop receiving in the rest of your life. So flourishing and thriving after narcissistic abuse is, I can receive love easily. I receive it in. I get to choose. I'm not controlled. I have total freedom. If I want to make a mistake, I'll make a mistake. If I want to do this, I'm going to do this. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. So you're totally free. And it's you really backing you, like genuinely, really backing your dreams. Are your actions matching your words? And are you really going for it for you? So I always think about, you know, when you're with a narcissist, think about them as a bit like a Hoover. They're just sucking the energy in, and you are used to giving all your energy out. Thriving after narcissistic abuse is you learning to suck that energy in for you, right? And you know that you're already billowing energy out. That's great. We're not changing that. We want you now to receive. What do we want? We want you to learn what it feels like to be fully supported by this planet. We want you to know what it feels like to be fully supported by people you feel emotionally safe with, right? So you're not a lone ranger, because that's a huge thing after narc abuse. A lot of us initially we do everything on our own because we can't really trust anybody, and we can't trust ourselves to make the right decisions on people, because Lord knows we didn't before. And so we do a lot of stuff on our own. And so it's like learning to let love back in, and that can take a while. And then one of the things that I really love is learning to be celebrated again. You know, it's like actually having attention, actually being seen. So we're not just useful, we're actually, people really see us, and we allow ourselves to be seen. We allow ourselves to be heard. We let people in, and we just know that the universe has our back, people have our back, and we have our back. And so we start to have more pleasure in our lives. We start to have fun again. We allow ourselves deep rest. Many of us haven't really rested, you know. When you're in narc abuse, it's done. And even if you're lying in bed at night, it's still constant. It's like proper deep rest, where you literally, and I talk about this a lot. I talk about, treating yourself like a goddess rather than a narcissist. So one of the things that I always say to myself is, am I treating myself like a goddess right now? Oh, no, I'm not. Okay, what do I need? I need that. So it's having that beautiful relationship with me where I treat myself like the divine being I am, because I'm so used to not. I'm so used to the opposite. And so it's like making me large. Can I hear myself? Can I see myself? Can I treat myself like a goddess? That's flourishing. It's incredibly healing.
Absolutely. And I love your concept of turning yourself on, right? Like coming alive and things being yummy and decadent and fabulous, right? Like what does that mean to you, turning
Oh my
yourself on?
God. It's like, it's just like turning on your power, turning on your light, turning on all your top notes, like your glitter and your effervescence. It's that. It's that. It's like you being the goddess you were born to be. And if you don't like the word goddess, queen, you being the queen you were born to be, you being the power you were born to be, you being the woman you were born to be. It's that. And so turning yourself on, I know we use it in a sort of sexual sense, but if you think about it in a sexual sense, it's turning your delight on, it's turning your happiness on, it's turning your ooh la la on. It's like, okay, we can do that in our daily life, right? So what's going to turn me on right now? Well, right now I'm drinking hot water. I'm drinking rooibos and Earl Grey tea. I've got water that's got 2 different minerals that I have squirted into it. I fucking love. And I've got a candle burning frankincense. What else have I got? I've got one of my beautiful crystals here. Don't ask me to say what it is. Labradorite, I can never say it. I've got 3 lip glosses, 1 other lip pencil, and I'm good to go, right? So it's like, let's turn ourselves on. Let's turn our life force on, because that whole vacuum cleaner thing, what does that do? It sucks our life force out. Literally, what do you end up feeling like a deflated balloon when you're around narcissists? And so we want to do the opposite now. I want to get used to being filled up, full up, filled up, turned on, and all of that stuff, so that we just got the light back in our eyes,
And I love how simple those things are, right? Like I think sometimes we get in our heads and like it has to be this whole big ass thing. And really like you have mineral water and a candle and a crystal that makes you just really fucking happy. Like it's so simple, but you have to be the one to choose it, right? You chose to light the candle. You chose to take 45 seconds to put minerals in your water, right? Like today, I'm in Pennsylvania in the US and it's chilly here, right? We have began fall and it's my favorite. And I've been waiting like 6 months to put this big ass sweater on. If you're not watching the video, I mean, this thing is like a fucking blanket. And I this morning and I was like, oh, today's the day. Today's the day. And I put on my wingtip liner and I put on this giant, like comfy, cozy sweater. And I just feel in myself. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's so simple, but it's a conscious choice, right? Like you can force yourself to put on clothes that make you feel like a bag of assholes, or you can put on this big ass sweater that just feels like a big ass hug. And that it's those little changes that make you feel alive, that make you feel connected, that turn you on, right? Like it's that stuff. It's the saying yes to yourself in the littlest of moments.
Yeah, because that's, when you take a physical action, like your beautiful jumper, and you're like, the time has come you're mine, let's go. It's embodiment. Your physical action means that you're embodying this you that wasn't allowed to be in your previous incarnation. There wasn't room for her, right? She would have gotten beaten up, like emotionally or physical and everything else in between. So now it's like, okay, I don't need to spend 5 years at a spa. I can actually do this incrementally, and it's the little things. So I always think, honor your energy, but do the little things that really turn your happiness on, right? Because that's embodiment. That's how you become the woman you were born to be.
And there it is. There it is, my friends. My gosh, I could talk to you for about 6 more hours, but for the sake of this episode, I would love to make sure that everyone knows where to get in contact with you and learn more about what you offer.
Absolutely. So my website is your best place. It's marinaj.net. marinaj.net. And on there, I've got a free Facebook group. There's my book, Turn Yourself On. And I have a number of courses where you can heal, you can flourish after narcissistic abuse. There's lots of blogs on there, free resources. And then you can come see me on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. And I'm under those Marina J coaching, which is just easy to remember. So yeah, absolutely. Come say
Excellent.
hi.
I will absolutely make sure we link all of that in the show notes today. And I have to know, what does the word gutsy mean to you?
Gutsy, it always actually interesting. It always feels like a very English word. Oh, that's a gutsy move, you know? It feels like the gutsiest thing for me is to be me. And I think I'm still getting there. I don't think I'm fully there, in all honesty. And so for me, gutsy is, yeah, you can make a gutsy move, but gutsy is how, like, when I look at myself on social media, I personally think I wouldn't really know who I was in a nice way. I think I need to be out there a lot more. I need to be posting a lot more, doing a lot more. There's still a part of me that's hiding a bit, and that is a narcissistic abuse, you know?
Yeah.
So I think a very gutsy move would mean for me to be gutsy and just be going out there a lot more and being me a lot more, and trusting that the world that I'm in now is no longer that narcissistic bubble I used to be in, and the people I serve are not narcissistic. So to trust that they are light workers, they are going to, and you're going to get the odd person here or there. But to me, that gutsiness right now in my life is being fully me and putting myself out there.
I love it. And as you do that, it's like you shine up a beacon and people find you and they're like, where have you been? I've needed someone like you. I just think that's always so incredibly fascinating, that the more you allow yourself to be you, the more you impact the people in your world, and even beyond that.
100%. And I think the people that have had narcissistic abuse and difficult relationships and toxic relationships, you know, that narcissist recognized the power in you before you did, recognized the light in you before you did. And as you start to really see who you are and how amazing you are, you throw the rest of those old shackles off, and you really allow yourself to be seen and cherished and loved and celebrated, because you're the reason that you are here. You've got so much to give, and the narcissist wanted it all for themselves. And now it's like, right, let's go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Marina, you are an absolute joy and pleasure to share space with. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your energy with us today. I know that this is going to impact a lot of lives.
Thank you for having me. And I love your energy. You are very gutsy, Laura. It's awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure, my friend. If this episode touched a part of your heart or your soul today, I would love to connect with you. Shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram. I'm at that Laura Ora. I would love to hear what stood out to you today. I would love to hear maybe what filled your soul or nurtured your heart, or maybe even just an aha moment that you had a little bit of a wake up today. When you DM me, it's me answering. So I would absolutely love to hear from you. This Thursday on the Power Back episode, we're going to talk about work-life balance and how that's such utter bullshit. It's yet another expectation, or should, this magical level of something that we must achieve to be successful in life, right? I'm gonna call horseshit. So we're going to debunk it. We're going to talk about what that actually means, what it translates, and how you can achieve your own version of this in your own life and business. If you're digging the Gutsy podcast, if we are providing nuggets of wisdom, if you're taking something away from the show, I would absolutely, big puffy heart, appreciate if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.